Welcome back to Looking Forth, the channel brought to you by Fourth Horizon & Co. and our network of creatives and makers, design thinkers and unthinkers, futurists and digital transformers, all with a common purpose of helping organizations like yours find new forms of value at the intersection of business and technology.
Next time, generative AI is a thought helper, in this case for customer research, part of our series on addressing the AI leadership gap. In this session, we'll do three main things. First, some prompt writing good practices, then a step-by-step follow along of a multi-step prompt for customer research, and finally, we'll round out with common sense advice on incorporating Gen AI in your research, not totally relying on it. Let's get to it. Some weeks ago, I was asked by an organization to see how I could help their sales team get more impact and value from their first discussions with their potential customers. The session needed to be hybrid and interactive, so I needed a method where people could access the prompts and follow along regardless if they were in the room or online. So I resorted to slides that could easily be shared and left behind, and that's what we'll see in the session. However, to do this well would be a great use for a prompt library. If you want to learn more about how and why to use a prompt library, have a look at our companion session on doing just that, a link in the show notes. They were kind enough to allow me to record the session, but when I played it back, there were two main things. The audio quality was not great because of the room and the devices, and if you listen hard enough, some of the background discussion includes potential customer names. So I decided to recreate the session in the same format. So let's get into some prompt crafting good practices. We'll have a quick look at the anatomy of a prompt, then some common prompt patterns and common mistakes, wrapping that up with some key takeaways. Then the main body of this session, generative AI is your thought helper for the purposes of customer research. 6 prompts used in sequence to generate an industry point of view, a customer point of view that helps you do your job as a salesperson. And then assistive AI, or don't rely on AI alone. So let's just dwell on this a second. Anatomy of a prompt. Actually, we'll start at the bottom on model hyperparameters. If you're using a consumer service like ChatGPT, you probably have very little option to change some of these things. Temperature, the classic hallucination story. Low temperature, very consistent. High temperature, more likely to be creative. Other hyperparameters include frequency penalties, max K, max P, and what that really allows you to do is change the probability and the frequency of how often certain words will appear. This is why some organizations actually choose to create their own product, say Cortex in Snowflake or something else, where you can actually change these parameters to really drive consistency and quality. But let's have a look at this. So we'll look at a point of view, instruction clarity. I am a salesperson or you are a salesperson. If you have the ability to do it, and logically link in grounding data, and this is possible if you're using something like Cortex, where you can actually open up corpus of knowledge and actually link some of these things through. Likewise, you could do this in, say, Einstein prompt templates in Salesforce, or many other tools allow you to do this. We're looking at some conditional logic. If something happens, do something else. Really try to guide what you want the LLM to do. Tone and style. And British English formal style, you could have informal style, you could have quirky, really give it some character. What you want to do is make that character consistent with your organization. Policies, use of bad language is one example. In this case, you'll see do not mention any company names except mine, so don't include competitor information. Makes sense and is obvious. And then output specification. What do you want the output to look like? And also we'll talk a little bit about large language models in different options and how you might want to use them. So we'll have a look at some common prompt patterns, 6 of them. I'm actually not going to spend too much time on 2 of the bottom 3, 0 shot, 1 shot, kind of less relevant today in the way large language models have moved on. Used to be super relevant when prompt engineering was a real thing, where you really needed to give guided examples. Today, it's less important than it used to be, although as more compute is being spent on inference, maybe 0 shot and 1 shot might actually become more important. We don't know. Watch this space and find out. But let's talk about the persona pattern. What do you want the LLM to act like? Is there a specific person, a specific persona, a specific identity that you want the LLM to behave like? And you'll see some examples of that when we get into the prompts. Instruction-based pattern, clear step-by-step guidance on how to perform the task you're asking it to do. And we'll talk a little bit about overloading in a second. Summarized pattern, how do you take a large body of text, turn it into shorter versions, turn it into tables, turn it into paragraphs, focusing on key points? And again, this is about consuming the output, particularly when you see the last prompt we'll go through in a second, summarizing all of that down into a very simple email you could then send on to your customer prospect. And then the step-by-step pattern, break the task down into clear, ordered steps for easy understanding for the LLM, but also for you when you're going through and actually thinking about, ask a specific question, get a specific answer, and then we can actually then move through and actually start to bring some analytics and our own creativity into the way we do those prompts. So we'll talk about some common mistakes. An ambiguous and vague prompt. Something like, tell me about climate change. That really is too broad, too really unclear, and leaves way too much room for the AI to interpret how you want that to be addressed. So we need to be really specific. So if you look at a much better example, explain the impact of climate change on sea levels over the past decade, insert country name, might be an example of something that's way more specific. Lack of context. Give me ideas for a marketing strategy. Marketing what, to who, where. Really not giving enough background information, and so your responses will be off target. Let's think about a much better example. Our company sells eco-friendly products online. Can you suggest a marketing strategy to reach environmentally conscious consumers? Much better, far more specific. Overloading, basically asking the model to do too much at once, too many tasks in one prompt. Summarize this article and tell me how it relates to our sales strategy. There's really three things there, two or three things you could do there. Break that down into smaller bite size. First of all, you might want to upload the sales strategy as a piece of context. Then you would ask to summarize that down. And then once it's summarized it, then you would then ask the correlation between this article that I've given you, the sales strategy I've given you, what is the intersection between those two ideas? Much more easy to control, much more easy to craft the prompt, and much more easy to get a consistent, reliable output. Too generic. What should we do to improve customer satisfaction? In what way? For what purpose? To what end? Where are you now? Where do you want to be? So let's think about that more specifically. What customer service improvements can we implement to reduce response time and increase satisfaction? So we've got two very simple KPIs we're looking there. We want to reduce response time and we want to increase customer satisfaction. Now the large language model can actually go off and interpret your current response time, look at your current CSAT, and actually look at some key actions that you could do in your contact center through your various channels to actually address those two key KPIs. And then we get into outputs. If you don't define the output, you'll just get whatever it decides to do. Typically a list of text, maybe some bullet points. So give me a plan for launching a new product. How do you want that plan? What are you going to do with it downstream? How do you want to consume it? So here, give me a step-by-step plan for launching a new product, including timelines and key deliverables. Gives a much better sense of the structure. And actually, you could then also further incorporate there, I want that as a table. I want that, you can think about how you want that output to look like. So you can then pick it up and use it further downstream in a different tool. So be specific, use precise language, provide context where it makes sense, break down the tasks into a smaller set of simple tasks, and define the output. It's really as simple as that. So when we think about getting started with prompts, if you're a basic user or you want to improve your prompting skills, context plus intent plus expectation, that is really what makes up a good prompt. Is think about I want you to be a certain specific sort of persona, show me the results in the form of a table, make sure to cite all sources and location. Perplexity is very good at citing sources. Gemini has got a lot better. And so you'll see the tools as they changed over time for some of these. And this is why you should actually go back regularly, review your prompts. And as the model has advanced and moved on, new capability has arrived, how could you rewrite your prompts to be more specific, have more context, have more intent, be very clear on the expectations, and actually make a good prompt better. So where we're going to go to next is I'll go into some slides that I prepared, as I said, the reasons why we did that was because it needed to be in a form where people in the room, people online could easily interact with the content. It was designed to be interactive. So in this case, I actually asked people they might want to huddle around to a laptop because the room really wasn't big enough to have everybody on board and on a keyboard. And really what we're going to do next is go back into some slides and show you those prompts, and then we'll start going through prompting out and putting into a prompt library. Okay, I've come out of slideshow because I actually need to get into the boxes and copy these prompts out. And if you've actually gone off and followed the link to the prompt library, you might see I actually might have to do this a couple of times because I might not grab all the text at the right time, hence why we use a prompt library so we can consistently copy the body of the prompt to the clipboard and put it straight into our product of choice. I'll be using Google Gemini in this case, and in specifically 2.5 Flash. So what are we going to do with this first prompt? Who is the customer? We really want to get to know who the customer is and the industry they operate in. So what we're going to do first is we're going to grab this body of this prompt, copy it to the clipboard, and I'm also just going to pause here a second. How I've structured this prompt is I've put as much task-specific information at the top. You can see here I've used a persona-based prompting technique. You are a business consultant with expertise in analyzing customers and the industry they operate in. And then I've said specifically here, when asked for a customer name, you will determine the industry and sub-industry they operate in. The reason why I've done that is because then I can simply reuse this prompt. I don't have to go and change the text to represent a new customer name. So you can see how I close this out. You can now ask me for the customer name. So now when we go into Gemini and we simply put that prompt in, so you can still the same prompt. You are a business consultant, etc., etc. Finishing with you can now ask me for the customer name. So it's going to go off and work out what I'm asking it to do. And now please provide me the customer name. So let's use something you're all familiar with. I'll use IKEA, or as we say here in Thailand, IKEA, because that's how we spell it. Hit the go button. And now Gemini will go off and provide a summary of IKEA. So the customer name, most recent employee count, all the things I've asked it to do. Main industry is retail. It also has some special industries and sub-industries. Obviously retail, but for us, we think of it as flat panel, self-build furniture. But we know they're also getting into smart home technology. There's an interesting call out here on sustainability in the circular economy. A couple of years ago, one of the things IKEA did is it actually put into its catalog carbon miles, carbon emissions for that product. As part of that, if you know anything about ESG, that's really about scope one. But in order to happen, because they use an ecosystem of suppliers for certain parts, as part of their scope 3 emissions, they actually had to go out across their ecosystem and say, in order to produce that widget that you put into the corner that allows you to put a bolt in from the side, what is the carbon footprint of that thing? And then when we multiply it out and bring it into the factory where we package all those things together to create the box that you understand and see on the shelf in IKEA. I'm sure many of you have had the reindeer meatballs in IKEA. That's the food service part. Real estate, obviously, they've got their own real estate footprint that they build out with shopping centres, and they're gradually getting into mixed-use property development where you have IKEA as an anchor store and then smaller retail footprint around it, including other food and beverage outlets. So, and obviously last mile logistics, right? So they have to, in many cases, you say, I want you to deliver it to my house. Transportation, logistics, innovation, both into their distribution centers, into their main stores, and from the main stores back out to where you are as a customer. So actually quite some interesting things in here to think about in terms of AI and robotics. And we could next, we'll go into the next prompt. And this is really a side story. So if you didn't understand retail or manufacturing well, I've given you this prompt, which is, I'm new to this industry, and I really want to understand the terminology and language. When I hear customers talk, I really want to understand what it is. That helps me listen, so I can hear key terms for them, and it also helps me think about objection handling. So we will just put this out, copy this in, and we'll come back into Gemini. And you can see here in terms of output, provide your response as a table. Okay, so we've gone off because the main industry is retail, and now Gemini is going off and actually working out. So what are some of the key acronyms and phrases I might hear? 3PL, third-party logistics. We're partnering with a new 3PL to streamline our e-commerce order fulfillment. AOV, B2B, and you can see down buy online, pick up in store, BOPIS, cost of goods sold, conversion rates, customer lifetime value. So if you're not used to this industry, actually this will help you really jumpstart your understanding. So when people start to use some of these phrases like OOS, out of stock, you understand what it is, and you'll hear it in a context of a sentence that you might hear when you're talking to customers and when you're playing back meeting notes in your head and actually thinking about, okay, they talked about a point of sale. How could we help them address some of the challenges of integrating a new POS, inventory tracking, training current sellers how to use that new POS? So you can start to get an idea of then how I'm going to think about building out my point of view for that customer. So let's move on to the next part of the prompt by prompt. So now we're going into the why. So ground your prompt with an anchor use case where we can best help to identify opportunity areas for change. So what we're going to ask is we're going to say, you're still a business technology advisor. We're going to change your focus a little bit to think about digital transformation. And then we're going to look at an industry of focus, in this case, retail. And I want the LLM to come up with typical transformation drivers in retail that might be interesting for my customer that I can then build on as we go through the next set of prompts. So grab all of that body, copy, and then come down, paste, and hit go. So let that build out a little bit. So what we've said, if you remember the prompt, we asked for short name that is meaningful to some C-level executive, COO, CEO, CFO, whoever, a summary of the reason why this might be important to them, and a use case that we can build on later that is relevant to this industry, to this customer. In this case, retail industry and specifically IKEA. So we come down and we'll see hyper-personalization, hyper-personalized customer journeys in an increasing competitive market, and therefore AI-powered product recommendations. So we can see we've got 3 solid use cases. And one of the benefits of using Gemini is we can then export this into Google Sheets, and then we can work on that further and build that out. But what we're going to do next is we're going to come back into the next prompt, and we are going to copy that body, and we will then go into Gemini. Just going to pause here a second. The organization I was working with, in this case, they sell Salesforce as a complete platform. If, though, your organization was a Dynamics 365 reseller or an implementation SI partner, maybe you're an Odoo partner, maybe you're an OutSystems, thinking low-code, no-code, maybe you're an OutSystems, maybe you use Glide, maybe you're Mendix, maybe you're Appian. The benefit of this prompting technique is now, because it's specifically in this turn, I can simply get the word Salesforce here and put in Odoo or Dynamics 365 or SAP or whatever I want to do. And if you go back to the prompt library example that we shared in the link, this will be how you could actually store those prompts. And if you're selling multiple systems, maybe you're a reseller like Software One or someone, and you've got multiple service lines that are selling different products, Accenture, they've got a Google Cloud practice, they've got a Salesforce practice, they've got an AWS practice, a Microsoft practice. You could have a prompt already pre-written that has all of those technology partners that you're selling, and you just repeat that prompt, and actually you could then get a multiple platform view for this one customer that would help you then work out who are we going to back, what is our technology partner of choice we're going to go in and talk to this customer about. But we've got that in the clipboard, and we're going to paste it into here. And so remember, one of the use cases was hyper-personalized customer journeys. And so we see the rationale, why we're doing that. And in this case, how Salesforce addresses this for IKEA as a retail customer. And so then we start to get a view of the different Salesforce products in this case. And then the next use case, AI-powered product recommendations and virtual design. And so you can then start to see how we build out the relevance of the product choice within the use cases were identified as those digital transformation initiatives. And so we just built this out, it carries on, and now we have a solid design pattern for each of these initiatives that we've identified. Next, then, we're going to think about business value, the urgency for change. Why should IKEA change at all, and why now, if at all? So we simply paste the next one in. And so again, we're carrying on the context window. So we said, elaborating further on your last response, you've given us some imperatives for digital transformation, but why should IKEA do that now? And in this case, with Salesforce. And so what are some of the competition drivers? Think Porter's 5 forces. What's going on in the retail industry? Think about Trump tariffs today as we record this and the impact on supply chain. We think about historically the impact on supply chain with COVID. You think about some of these macro shocks you might experience as a customer, and therefore how digital transformation technology and approaches can help address some of those that have already happened. How do we learn from it and cope next time? If we're thinking futures thinking, if we're thinking strategic foresight, how could we envisage scenarios with some of these digital transformation initiatives that we could start to prepare for? Start to experiment with technology about how we might address that should it come up. Or if we really think that scenario is interesting, how could we use digital transformation technology and business platforms now to shape that scenario into our future business model and strategy going forward? So this is where we really start to think about not just today, inside and now, but outside and then, and actually start to think about how, in this case, retail and IKEA are going to evolve over time, how we expect technology to evolve over time, and how those forces merge together, as we say, at the intersection of business and technology that might help an organization like IKEA get new value or new forms of value as they continue to evolve their business model and strategy. So we've got a lot of information here. And we think about some of the common mistakes and we think about some of the things we've spoken about in common prompting patterns. What we really want to do now is summarize this down in a way that we could send this off as an email or as a flyer, as essentially a pitch document to one of our potential customers or whoever we're going to talk to at IKEA in this case. So let's come and have a look at this last prompt. Use the business drivers, the reason and urgency for change, and the role that Salesforce, again, could be Odoo, could be Dynamics 365, could be Mendix, can have in helping my customer, IKEA, address these challenges and opportunities. Summarize into a short email with no more than 3 bullet points. Output specific. We're asking for a specific format. Use a friendly but formal tone. Again, thinking back to language, tone, and persona. To communicate to a C-level executive, the desired outcome is a meaning to discuss in more detail. So we're looking for a call to action, not just simply here's an email, but actually how can I come and meet you when and talk about this in more detail. So copy that body, come back into Gemini, paste it in, and off we go. And so we've got a subject line, unlocking IKEA's next chapter, driving growth through digital transformation. Dear, and this is where you go into your CRM system, put in the person's name, CEO, CFO, and here we've got some of the tagline that's come out of some of that research in today's rapidly evolving retail landscape. And we've identified some key areas, lifetime value through hyper-personalization, resilient, intelligent supply chain, and driving operational excellence and profitability. 3 bullet points as we've asked for. And then when we then come back down into the platform of choice, data unification, AI-powered personalization, which was also a digital transformation driver, and extensive integration options. Think about core technology to help you achieve the outcomes we've described and exposed through this research. And now we're trying to weave the technology and the business story together. And then finally, I'd appreciate the opportunity to schedule a brief meeting to delve deeper into how these strategies can translate into tangible business value and discuss a tailored roadmap for IKEA. Best regards, David Mold, Business Technology Advisor. So now that you've seen these simple yet well-crafted prompts and how they can add real and consistent value to a sales team, I will add a warning. This is not a replacement for critical and analytical thinking. This is an aid, merely an accelerator to help you rapidly learn about a new customer, a new market, or a new industry. It does not replace the need to validate and cross-reference. One way to do this, given the different data sets, different data models are trained on, and how the AI labs approach their foundation models, is to run the same prompts in different tools and see what is common and what is unique. So today we've done it in Gemini. We could repeat those same prompts in ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude AI from Anthropic. The unique ideas may be completely wild, which is why you check, but they may also inspire you with something novel, unexpected, or simply filling in a personal blind spot that you have. In this way, the direct application of generative AI for this is useful for wherever you are on the sales experience curve. As a new seller, this can really help. As a seller for a new product, industry, also valuable. For an experienced seller, think about refreshing your thinking to help you develop new sales pitches that better reflect the current industry, market, or product view. And as a sales manager, engage with the prompts and your sellers and weave in your perspective and point of view to help build additional context and value. If you can really work with the prompts yourself, you'll see what your sellers are getting out of it, and then you can then help them think about objection handling. Maybe you throw, well, actually, you'll challenge that. We've tried that 3 years ago, 4 years ago. We're not ready for that discussion yet. Whatever that is, there is a way for wherever you are on that sales experience curve to get more incremental value from a well applied use of generative AI. So that's it. We've shown you some good practices on prompt writing. We've walked through a multi-step process to research a customer. And we've reiterated the need to work with these tools, not simply abdicate responsibility to them. This is one very simple but powerful way in which generative AI applied thoroughly can increase productivity, can initiate creative thinking, and still be valuable to all levels of experience.
If you found this interesting or useful, please like and consider subscribing. We welcome any questions, feedbacks, and comments. It helps us help you. Don't forget to check the show notes for further information and any links referred to in this show. Do feel free to connect with me or us, QR codes and URLs to LinkedIn right after this. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious. Original audio created using Refusion AI, intro video using Google VO, post-production editing in DaVinci Resolve, all by me, David Mott.